D&D number 10, Circle of Life in Jesus' Name, Part 2, Chapter 31. It's October 4th, Friday morning, Keno Martial Arts, Newport, California. By the time Jordan arrived at 10 a.m. in the morning to watch young Eric train, he and Gabe were already spent. Gabe was in the bathroom, puking his guts up, and young Eric was slumped on the floor, his chest heaving. Jordan smiled. She glanced at Grandmaster Keno, who smiled and came to greet her. "Hello, Jordan. How are you feeling today? Better?" "Yes, sir, and thank you for the session last night. You're very kind to take the time you do, especially since it was so late after Taylor's game, and then you still had to go to dinner." "Well, I'm not being kind, Jordan. I care about you." "I believe you." She glanced at young Eric. "You're working them hard today, huh?" Grandmaster Keno smiled at her. "My intention is to push them way past what they think they can do. It's difficult, but in the end, it will pay off. And after lunch, the sparring today should be very interesting." "Why is that?" "Well, I believe young Eric has turned a corner, and I think having to fight while he was in jail was a big part of that. So we'll see if I'm right." Jordan nodded and pulled out her phone as it buzzed. She looked down at the screen. Her face paled, and she looked back up at Grandmaster Keno. She was breathing hard, and Eric realized that she was in distress. He put his arm around her to hold her up. "Come on, hon. Let's sit you down." He helped her over to a chair. Young Eric saw and immediately rose and came to her. "What's going on?" Grandmaster Keno looked at Jordan for the answer, and she handed him the phone. "I just got this." He looked at the phone. It was a picture of Josie and Jamie, as they were apparently walking into school with the words, "Do you really think those rent-a-cops will keep me from my children?" Eric handed the phone to young Eric so he could see. "Send that to me along with the sender's information." Young Eric did, and Eric Sr. was immediately on the phone to Jason. "Good morning, Eric. What you got for me?" "Good morning, Jason. You're on speaker with Jordan and young Eric. Jordan just received a pic of her brother and sister walking into their school with the message, 'Do you really think those rent-a-cops will keep me from my children?' Do you need her phone to trace it?" "No, just send me the information. Send it to me as a forward from her phone, please." "Got it." He looked up at young Eric. He nodded. "I'm doing it now." Gabe walked up. "Hey, Jordan, what's going on?" he said cheerfully. Young Eric showed him Jordan's phone. "Oh, well, that's a mood killer." "We'll see what we can do, Eric," Jason said. "And of course, we'll warn the agents and let them know that they are not to leave the school today. And I think we'll need to have a meeting with the school and the agents and Mrs. Perez today." "Well, what if the kids go out on the playground or something and he grabs them?" Jordan asked. "Exactly," Jason answered. "We'll call your mom. She'll have to go to the school and speak to the principal ASAP. The agents will also attend that meeting and make sure that the school understands how important this is. If I have to get the Hillcrest police involved, I'll do that too." Thank goodness Jordan had Mark get his visitation rights revoked and get a restraining order. Perez probably doesn't know that, but if he attempts to go near the kids, he'll discover it real quick. Jordan nodded, and then he'll be even more pissed off. "Too bad, and so what?" Gabe said. Jordan nodded. Young Eric knelt in front of her and looked up into her face. "Hey, baby, it's going to be okay." Why is he doing this? I mean, I know I said it before that he's like gone full criminal. I mean, he was once a good man, I think. He was responsible. He went to work. He was good to my mom, at least he was for a while. And I watched him with the kids, especially with Jamie. He played with them and laughed with them. "But not you?" young Eric asked. She shrugged. "Well, I didn't expect him to. I wasn't his. But then everything changed when he lost his job. Everything about him changed. I don't understand." Grandmaster Keno nodded. "I know it's hard to understand. And as much as we want to hate this guy, we have to see it from God's perspective. Look at it as a little battle between dark and light. He was not a bad guy until he lost his job. And you said after he lost his job, he started drinking heavily, right?" "Yeah, that's when things got bad." "Well, his drinking put a crack in the armor of what might have once been a good man. But you get that crack in the armor and the dark forces, the demons, Satan's minions, they start in. It's just a whisper at first. They whisper to him, and then they attach themselves to him. Now, when you, a being of light, one of God's own children, come around, they tell him you're bad. They actually want him to end you because the darkness hates the light. It's as simple as that. Though he may have tried to fight them off, you can't do that if you're bitter or angry or have resentment in your heart or have no relationship with God. And he had no relationship. He may have been a good man, but he had no relationship with God. And he had bitterness and resentment in his soul. And then any rationality left him when he grabbed you that day out by your car. He realized immediately that he'd messed up because he knew you would make sure he can't ever do that again. He knew you would report it and send him back to jail. And all of this happened because when he lost his job, he lost his self-worth. And that's how Satan gets in and steals away your soul. That's why we can't let our worth be attached to things like our careers or our wealth, our looks, fancy cars, fame. None of those things should determine how we feel about ourselves. Only our connection to God should determine that. If we're connected to God through our Savior, then none of those things I just mentioned are important. We know we belong to God, and the joy in knowing that cannot be destroyed by the loss of our job. We are lights to a world of darkness. You are a light, Jordan, and the demons attached to Peter are trying to put out your light. She shook her head. I don't know if I'm much of a light. Well, I do, young Eric said. I saw your light the moment I met you. Jordan, Grandmaster Kino said softly, just the fact that Peter wants to hurt you, to maybe kill you, tells me that your light is bright. And when Jesus was walking on the earth, he came upon a crowd of people, and a few of them were demon-possessed. And through the mouths of the men they possessed, the demons cried out and asked Jesus if he were there to end them. They immediately recognized him as the Son of God, and they were instantly afraid of him. So in like manner, the demons attached to your stepfather saw your light, knew you were a daughter of God, meant for great things, and used Peter to try to put out that light. So, I'll pray for Peter Perez, but what happens to him is between God and him. But I won't compromise with evil, and we will protect you, and God will protect you and your family. It seems like all of this is complicated, but actually, it's all just a battle between the forces of darkness and the forces of light. But don't worry. The forces of light, being God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, the angels of light, and God's children, like you and me, we are stronger than the forces of darkness. Well, then it's sad, really. Sad that Peter is lost, Jordan said softly. Maybe he's lost. Like I said, it's between him and God. I can't make that judgment, but I have to say, the compassion you just showed toward a man who is trying to hurt you, that is the light of Christ in you, Jordan. And I'm really honored to have you in our lives. Gabe smiled, young Eric smiled, and his eyes glowed with the love he felt for his girl. Well, let's get these guys back to work so they can battle all these dark forces like the warriors of light they are, Eric Sr. said. You guys use the Kino form to warm back up. Jordan and I will just sit here and watch, and I'll point out to her all the mistakes you make. You mean the mistakes Gabe makes, young Eric quipped. Well, we'll just see about that, Gabe returned. Jordan smiled at the banter. How she loved this family. The two young men trained for another 2 hours before they stopped for lunch, which was brought in by the Simply Clean, Superb Subs people. Arriving at the same time was Shelley with 5 children, and Jeffy and Cam. Also filing into the studio were 3 masters and 3 black belt students from other Kino schools. Jordan looked up to see Joey and Breeze Adams and their 3 children, Sophia, Kelston, and Ledger. And then Logan Adams walked in, and right behind him, 3's parents. Jordan realized today's sparring was going to be a big deal. Master Foreman locked the studio doors with the usual sign in the window that read, "Private training session today until 5:30 p.m." His own students who were already in the building were allowed to stay if they wanted to witness what was going on. After lunch was enjoyed by all present and digested, the sparring participants began to warm up, stretch out, and get their hands taped. Gabe would go first, warring against the 3 black belt students who'd been brought in, and then against Logan, and then young Eric. Young Eric would then go against the 3 masters that had come in, and then against his Uncle Joey, the current challenge champion, and finally against his own father. Gabe fought well against the 3 young black belt students. He put them down quickly with no real problems, and that was as expected. Gabe didn't win that first mini-mart by accident. In the match against Logan, Gabe held his own for a few minutes, but Logan finally put him down. That, too, was as expected since Logan was a 3rd dan. Gabe's fight against young Eric did not go as Gabe expected. He had no chance. He couldn't land a punch or a kick, and young Eric put him down easily and quickly. Grandmaster Kino quietly nodded in approval. Young Eric helped Gabe up and mussed his hair. "Geez, Eric, you've turned into a beast," Gabe complained. "You'll get there," young Eric encouraged. Young Eric was given 10 minutes to rest, hydrate, stretch out again, and present himself as ready. Everyone watching became silent as young Eric dispatched 3 masters in a row. Not easily, not quickly, but it was obvious Eric had turned a corner. He was fierce. He was blinding fast. He was confident. When he made contact, it was powerful. His blocks were quick and precise. He put the first one on his back, and after the 3rd one, everyone knew it wasn't just a fluke. Each master bowed to Eric and congratulated him with a smile and a proclamation that he was going to really kick some butt in the challenge. No one dared to predict the winner, though, because you just don't do that. When young Eric looked up to see his Uncle Joey walk onto the mat and start stretching, he nodded. It was time to see if he really had improved. He didn't feel the usual dread he felt when he faced his uncle. At least there was that. He drank some water, stretched out his hamstrings, and moved forward. He remembered the warning given to him last time he faced his Uncle Joey. Block. Oh, he was going to do that and more. At least he thought he would. Still, even though he did block many of the punches coming in, within the first minute of the match, he'd been punched in the face twice and kicked in the back of the head once, which put him on his face. He rose to his knees, drew a deep breath, and stood back up. His uncle looked him straight in the eyes. "You should have known that was coming, 3. Grandmaster Kino smiled at the use of young Eric's nickname. It was a mind game Joey was using, a perfect mind game. Young Eric's brow furrowed at the use of the pet name usually only Jordan called him. Joey came at him and punched him in the face again. "Come on, 3, Joey said. "Block." Young Eric focused and blocked for the last 30 seconds of the round. He went to his grandfather. "He's toying with you, Eric. He used your nickname to make you think about Jordan, and that distracted you." Young Eric nodded. "Well, that wasn't very nice." Eric Sr. laughed. "Well, the guys you're going to fight won't be very nice either." Young Eric nodded again. "Got it." He rose and went back out. The rest of the match, Joey hit him several more times, but young Eric got in 3 punches and 2 kicks himself. The last time he'd fought him, he'd only connected once, so he was improving. He was exhausted, so when he faced his father on the mat, he realized he wasn't going to last very long. His Uncle Joey was known for his speed because he was trained by Ricky Kino, who was also known for being quick like lightning in his strikes and kicks. Young Eric fought hard against his father. He actually got in a few punches and 1 giant kick to the back of his father's thigh, which made him go down briefly, but that was it. His dad jabbed at young Eric's jaw and connected. Eric saw stars and sunk down. Grandmaster Kino called the fight. Young Eric remained on the floor on his knees while his grandfather thanked everyone for coming and participating. Little Nate came running to him and put his little arms around Eric's neck. "I'm okay," young Eric assured the little guy as he hugged him and patted his back. Jordan came and offered him a bottle of water, which he accepted with a smile. "You were awesome today," she said softly. He nodded. "I'm getting better. A few more weeks, and I bet I put Uncle Joey down." "Well, that would be fun to see. What about your dad?" He grinned. Well, I'm not sure if I can do that, mostly because, well, he's my dad. There's this inner thing. It's hard to punch my own father. Well, it doesn't look like he has any problem punching his own son. Young Eric laughed. Well, it probably is hard for him, but like we keep saying, he knows it's all for a good cause. He rose. I'm going to go shower, and then you want to grab some dinner? If you feel like it. Of course I do. Why do you ask? I mean, your nose is bleeding, and I'm pretty sure you're going to have a black eye. He laughed. If you can stand to look at me, I'm game. Okay, then. Young Eric hit the shower, and Gabe was also back there. You okay, GT? Young Eric asked him. I'm tired. I'm tired, but hey, my face doesn't look as bad as yours. Eric chuckled. Truth. Jordan and I are going to go grab some dinner. You want to come? No. And I'm pretty sure you don't want me to come either. Besides, Taylor's waiting for me to come have dinner with her and your parents. Eric shrugged. I'm just being polite. And if you wanted to come, I'd have no problem with it. I'm just saying. Gabe smiled. Thanks. So you and my sister, things going pretty good there? Yes. She says she's in love with you. Well, I'm glad about that, 'cause I feel the same way. I mean, I'm in love with her. He laughed and then got serious. She's a great kid, but you know, she is a kid. Gabe shrugged. So am I. Yeah, but you're a kid with a lot of life experience. A lot. You've been kidnapped. You've had your throat slit. You've been shot more than once. You've been stabbed. You've killed 2 people, and you've, died yourself and come back to life. You've graduated from high school, and you're now an enrollee agent at Ameritech, and that makes you much more like a man compared to her being just a naive little girl. Gabe stepped out of the shower and wrapped a towel around his waist. So, what is it you're trying to say? You don't want me to be with your sister? Young Eric shook his head. No, I'm not saying that. If she has to have a boyfriend, I'd want that guy to be you. I'm just saying, remember, she's innocent. She's inexperienced in life, and she has a tender heart. Don't hurt her. Never. I would never hurt her, I swear. I love her, and if I were older and had my life together, I'd ask her to marry me. But I'm thinking your parents wouldn't be too happy about that, so I'll wait. I'll wait until I can't wait anymore. You wait until she can't wait anymore, no matter how long it takes. Gabe nodded. Copy. Excuse me? I mean, good copy, sir, he replied loudly. New scene. It's Saturday afternoon, October 5th, South Keno Estate, Crystal Cove, California. Young Eric and Gabe trained all morning and were given the rest of the day off. Usually they would be going to JoJo's game if it were a home game, but it was an away game, and usually for an away game, they would have left the day before and traveled to wherever the game would be. But because they were in training, they didn't travel, and so they had the rest of the day off. This Saturday, the game was at Arizona State. At first, Mark was going to miss his son's game and stay home with Bella because she was having a rough go with her pregnancy, which was the same reason they didn't go to Nashville to support Logan. But Bella insisted Mark go support his son and Logan go and support his brother, and Breeze promised to watch after her sister. Then it was decided that Breeze and the 3 little ones would just stay at Bella's house with her and help take care of Em too. And so Joey was also encouraged to accompany his brother Mark and go see his nephew Jojo play ball. And usually Eric and Shelley would also be at a game, home or away, but now that they had 5 little ones, they were becoming homebodies. This particular Saturday, they were screening women who might be a fit for their household in helping Shelley with the added chores, including the laundry. They were also looking for good babysitters with the right energy, ethics, and demeanor. Young Eric had moved back home to the South House, as they called it, and currently they were at the pool. It was a warm 83 degrees, the sun was shining, and the sky was a clear blue. Jordan had told him she hadn't been swimming in a pool very many times, so he invited her and her family to come over, swim, and have dinner. Currently, everyone was either jumping off the diving board or diving or flipping, and young Eric did a double back with a twist and landed neatly in the water. "Show off," Jordan yelled. He laughed. Not to be outdone, Gabe did a reverse 1.5 tuck. Taylor got up and did a beautiful jackknife, toes pointed, legs together. Jamie jumped off the board as high as he could and spun in a circle, and Josie simply jumped into the water. Jordan stood at the end of the board and measured the distance to the water, only a couple of feet, but she didn't want to take her turn. Young Eric went up to join her on the board. "Do you know how to dive?" She shook her head. I see how it's done, and it doesn't look so hard, but now that I'm up here, it seems pretty scary." "Well, if you've never done it before, it might be easier to learn off the side of the pool." He took her hand. "Come on, let's just jump in, and then I'll teach you from the side." She gave him her hand, and they jumped together. While Eric taught Jordan to dive, Gabe and Taylor played games with Jamie and Josie. At one point, Jordan looked up at a sound she'd almost forgotten. It was Josie, laughing and being silly. She seemed to respond really well to Gabe and Taylor, especially Taylor. Taylor was a light, like Grandmaster Keno talked about. She was so loving and kind, and she seemed to know just what Josie needed to bring her out of her shell. Jordan wasn't as concerned about Jamie, who was more exuberant and outgoing and seemed to be well adjusted. She turned in the water when young Eric placed his hand on her stomach and pulled her to him. "You ready to try again?" She shook her head. "Nope. I just want to stay right here in the water with you." He smiled. "I like that idea." He lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist and leaned back to float in the water. Young Eric looked at her floating there, the water sloshing around her. Her blonde hair floated out around her face. Her eyes were closed, her cheeks and lips pink, her stomach muscles ripped. He tried not to look too long at any other parts of her body, but he was a guy. He sighed heavily. She opened her eyes. "What are you thinking about, 3?" He smiled. She knew exactly what he was thinking about. "I was thinking about doing this," he said as he shoved her beneath the water. She came up quickly, though, and grabbed his head and tried to pull him under the water. He allowed it, but only so he could pull her down with him. He held her close and put his mouth to hers before he let her up to get her breath. She darted away and swam toward the shallow end of the pool. Ricky and Bree stood at the kitchen window watching the children play in the pool. Not that young Eric was a child, Gabe neither. Currently, Josie and Jamie were throwing a ball back and forth across the water. Young Eric and Jordan were sitting on the side of the pool, their feet dangling in the water. And Gabe and Taylor were standing off to one side of the pool, their heads close together as they spoke to each other. It was Taylor's scream that got their attention. "Be still," Gabe commanded sternly. Go away," she yelled, trying to run away from him. He jerked on her arm. "I said let me see," he said, and reached up and touched the edge of her bathing suit top. He pulled it slightly out and bent his head low to her breast. "No," she said, pulling away. He grabbed her again. Ricky stepped out of the glass doors. "Gabe." He looked up. "Yes, sir?" Ricky's eyebrows rose. Gabe looked back at Taylor, and his face paled. It's not what it looks like, sir." "In my study, please. Now." "Yes, sir," Gabe said, blowing out a breath. Taylor went running into the house, yelling for her mother. Jordan smiled up at young Eric. "You know a bee stung her, right?" Young Eric nodded. "Yep." "Are you going to speak up for Gabe?" He grinned. "Nope." She laughed. "You are so mean." "Yep." In the study, Gabe sat on the edge of the leather chair so his wet suit wouldn't ruin it. Ricky sat behind his desk. "You want to tell me why you were pawing at my daughter's breast?" Gabe swallowed. I wasn't pawing at it. I mean, at her." "Your fingers were under her top." "It was a bee. I think it stung her, I swear. She screamed and tried to get away from the bee, not from me. But it was already gone, and I wanted to see if I could get the stinger out." Ricky tried to suppress his smile. "Bee or not, you seem awfully familiar with putting your hands on my daughter." Oh, no, sir. I'm not familiar at all. I've never touched Taylor's breast. Really, I swear, Mr. Keno, I promise you, I've always been respectful of Taylor." Ricky grinned. "I know that, Gabe. I'm just messing with you." Gabe let out a deep sigh, then looked up at him. Why would you do that? Well, at first, I really did think you had your hands on my daughter, and then I realized what was probably all about and decided to entertain myself by watching you squirm. Well, I'm so happy that I can be your source of entertainment. Ricky laughed. It's not just going to be mine. It'll make a great story at the next family dinner. Gabe chuckled. You don't mind to laugh at your expense, do you? Ricky asked. No, sir, I don't. Not at all. Have at it. You're a good kid, Gabe. But listen, really, while I have you in here, I want to tell you that I think it would probably be best if you don't stay here. Gabe frowned. On the weekends is okay, but I think it best if Sunday night through Thursday night you stay at Dad's house. Have I done something that makes you think you can't trust me with Taylor? No, not at all. But I was young once, and I know how tempting it is to go down the hall and slip into someone's room. Either tempting for you or for her. I don't think it's wise that you actually live here in the same home as your girlfriend. Gabe sighed. He certainly wasn't going to argue with Taylor's father. I understand, sir. But come and stay every weekend. Yes, sir, thank you. Gabe, I sense that your feelings are hurt. He looked up at the man, a man for which he had true respect and admiration. I guess they are, though I understand that you're saying this for my own good and not because I've done anything wrong, but it feels kind of weird to get thrown out of the house, though. You're not being thrown out. Think of it as more suitable arrangements for a boyfriend and girlfriend. My daughter is madly in love with you. She's surely already spoken about wanting to live with you. She has? Ricky frowned. I guess I shouldn't have told you that. Well, it doesn't surprise me. You just acted surprised. Surprised that she told you. She didn't. She told her mother. Gabe nodded, not quite sure what to say. Have you and Taylor spoken about living together? Oh, no, sir. We wouldn't do that. If we lived together, it would be because we're married. Ricky frowned. Have you two spoken about getting married? Gabe shook his head. Not really outright. I mean, I think she's the one, and I can't see ever loving anyone the way I do Taylor. She's perfect in every way, but I know we're young, and she's not even out of high school. I gave her a promise ring just so she knows that I'm going to be waiting for her to, grow up. And what if she finds someone else, Ricky asked. Gabe nodded. I've thought about that. I realize it's a possibility, and I'll deal with it if it happens. And if that happens, I won't cause her any grief or heartache. I mean, if you're worried about that. Whatever God's will is for me and her is what I want. And if we're supposed to be together, we will be. I'll wait. But just so you know, Grandmaster Kino, I do love her, and I do want to marry her, and I will wait until I have your permission and until she's ready. Ricky nodded with a smile. Spoken like a man. Oh, thank you, sir. They both looked up at the knock on the door. Come in, Ricky said. Young Eric peeked in. Jordan made me come in and make sure that you know that Taylor was screaming because a bee stung her. Ricky grinned. Jordan made you, huh? Eric shrugged. Well, she really likes Gabe and was worried about him. And you weren't? Ricky asked. Eric smiled. Oh, I love Gabe like a brother, so that's why I was enjoying seeing him squirm. Gabe gave a short laugh. I'm learning that having brothers is no different than having sisters. Thanks a lot. Young Eric chuckled. No prob, little bro. Be nice, Ricky chided his son. It's possible that Gabe here may one day truly be your brother, or brother-in-law, I guess. Oh, I figured that out, Dad, a long time ago. Oh, and I have a message from Mom. She and Mrs. Perez are cooking up a storm, and dinner is almost ready, so you probably need to go change into dry clothes. Gabe nodded. Will do. Young Eric closed the door, and Gabe looked up at the man who, one day, may be his father-in-law. So I'm guessing I'll be moving in over at the Elder Grandmaster Kino's house after church tomorrow? Ricky nodded. Yes, unless you'd rather go find yourself an apartment or house for rent. He shook his head. I'm definitely not ready for that. Good, because my father and Shelley love you, and are very much looking forward to you staying with them. Yeah, because they don't have enough kids staying at their house. Well, the more the merrier, Ricky chimed. So that's all for now. Go get changed. Gabe nodded and rose. And Gabe? He looked up. Bree and I, we love you too. Gabe swallowed. Thank you, sir. The feeling is mutual. New scene. For the next few weeks, they settled into a rhythm or routine of sorts. They all attended church together, including Jordan's family. They had Sunday dinners together at the Elder Keno's. Young Eric with his father and Gabe with Grandmaster Keno began their days on their respective beaches at 6, and then were at the studio or at the Keno estate by 7 to train. He didn't see Jordan until volleyball games and on Fridays when he sparred. This past Tuesday and Thursday, everyone attended Taylor's last 2 regular season volleyball games. She rocked it, and they were all looking forward to the playoffs the next week. On Friday, the sparring went well for young Eric. His Uncle Joey was only able to connect with him a few times. Gabe, too, was doing better, and he didn't get sick at all. And on Saturday, USC played Washington State at home, but it was an early start time, 3 p.m., instead of 7, so young Eric decided he would go down to watch Jamie and Josie in their martial arts class, have lunch with Jordan's family at their home, and then attend the game. Mrs. Perez had declined the game because she wanted to get some housework done, since she'd been gone a lot lately, going to church and dinner with the Kenos. Josie also declined because she'd been invited to a birthday party, but Jamie was all in. And on his way to Hillcrest, young Eric had gotten into the habit of stopping by the Village Mart convenience store and gas station, just off the main highway. They sold fresh flowers, and he enjoyed seeing Jewel Perez's face light up when he handed her the flowers. He'd stopped so many times now that he'd struck up conversations with the homeless man who camped out beside the store during the daylight hours. He'd bought him and a few others lunch or dinner several times now, and today was no exception. He left the store with his flowers and headed to the house. Jordan, as usual, answered the door before he could even knock. She smiled her beautiful smile and stepped back to allow him entrance. Young Eric turned and smiled at the 2 agents. One parked in the driveway, and one parked in front of the house. 2 more agents were parked a little farther down the street and were walking the neighborhood, keeping eyes out for any suspicious activity. He went straight to the kitchen where he knew he would find Mrs. Perez and presented her with the flowers and kissed her cheek. He loved the way she giggled and blushed. It reminded him so much of Jordan. He then turned to his girl, pulled her close, tilted her chin up, and kissed her softly. I missed you. You just saw me yesterday, he whispered in her ear, making her blush with his words. I missed you in my bed. I hope my parents go out of town again soon. She didn't know what to say because she totally craved sleeping with him. It was truly like she'd told those reporters. He didn't have to drug her. She'd go to his bed willingly and often. Still, she knew he meant only to sleep. But the thought of becoming his wife in every way made her giddy, and he told her that would happen one day. She sighed. The kids ran from their rooms. Hey, Eric! Come on, Jordan, we're going to be late. They hurried out the door. Eric put Jordan, Josie, and Jamie in his car and took them to the studio. This time, Master Cook knew Eric intended to stay and watch class, and they were very welcoming to him. He usually felt a little uncomfortable that they treated him like he was special. They were giving respect to his name, he knew that, and his father and grandfather had definitely earned that respect. Hopefully, young Eric himself will do that in a few weeks. The challenge was November 9th, and today was October 12th. Not much time left. They walked into class, and Master Cook again called his class to order. Attention, class. Some of you may have been here when Master Keno stopped by to visit us a few weeks ago. It was the 11 o'clock class that he visited. So far, for those of you who haven't been introduced, let me introduce you to Master Eric Keno III. He's here just to observe class today. The class bowed reverently, and young Eric returned the bow. Master Cook nodded at Jamie and Josie. You may take your places. The children scurried to get in line. Also with Master Keno is his girlfriend, Miss Jordan Brooks. The class bowed, and Jordan also gave a slight bow. Jalen and Drew, would you please grab a couple of chairs to place here near the front for Master Keno and his girl? 2 teen boys quickly bowed. Yes, sir, they said in unison, and hurried to do as asked. Jordan had to smile. This show of respect was absolutely instilled in the Keno family. She could see that they practiced what they preached in their schools. Jordan was intrigued with how Master Cook ran his class. Except for a few teen black belts, most of the students were beginners, and most of their parents were sitting in the back of the class, and some were out in the reception area. Master Cook was a little less formal than Grandmaster Keno. He obviously had a good relationship with his students. They responded well to him, and that included Josie and Jamie. Young Eric recognized that Master Cook was running the students through a yellow belt test, though they themselves didn't know it. Eric could see that Jamie was passing with flying colors, and Josie was not, though Master Cook did not point that out. This was the way his father and grandfather sometimes promoted students. They tested them without knowing they were being tested, and then simply presented them with the belt. Sometimes they had group belt tests and group promotions. They were very strict about one thing, and that was that one be happy for a classmate who had advanced and was never resentful. Eric was curious to see how the class would take the news. They went all the way to lining up at the end of class, and standing at attention, they said the Keno student credo. Young Eric stood and said it with them. I will train diligently, do my best, and never give up. I will honor and respect my teacher, my school, my fellow students, and my fellow man. I will handle myself with integrity. I will be honest with the world and with myself. I will search for and follow my true path to the best of my ability. The students repeated loudly. At ease, Master Cook commanded. The students spread their feet slightly apart and clasped their hands behind their backs. Some of you have never seen martial arts before, have never watched a martial arts movie, and are just beginning. There's no shame in that. Instead, it is an honor that you have chosen to do something that will enhance your life and the lives of the people around you. Some of you are just beginning in a formal class but have been intrigued by the martial arts for years. There's also no shame in that. Some of those people are in our class, and they have been working hard for years. We actually have 3 people who I will offer a yellow belt to today. For those of you I don't name, will we feel sad or ashamed? No, sir, the students yelled. Will we be excited and happy for the ones who have finally, after years of loving the martial arts, made their yellow belts? Yes, sir, he smiled. I'm very proud of you all for that. For the ones who don't receive your belt today, will you come to class and continue to work very hard toward your goals? Yes, sir. I'm very proud of you for making that promise. So, today, since we have a special guest with us, we will ask him to place your belt on your waist. When I call your name, step forward. Master Cook's wife handed 3 folded yellow belts to Eric. Randall Fetter, he said. The boy's eyes opened wide, and a huge smile spread across his face. The black belt boys applauded, letting the other students know it was okay to do so. The parents in the back also applauded. Eric smiled warmly and motioned for the boy to approach him because he seemed like he wasn't sure if he should. Eric knelt down, removed the white belt, and replaced it with the new yellow belt and tied it snugly. Congratulations, Randall, Eric said to him. Good job. Okay, you can go back to your place. Christy Byer, Master Cook said. The girl very seriously came forward to the applause and stood in front of Eric. He very seriously placed her belt on her. She looked up at him and smiled, and he smiled back. Good job, Christy. Keep up the good work. She nodded and went back to her place. And finally, Jamie Perez. He pumped his fist. Yes, he whispered, making parents laugh. He came to Eric and grinned up at him, his eyes moist. Eric placed a hand on his hair. Good job, Jamie. I'm proud of you. He put his belt on him while everyone applauded. Attention, Master Cook said sharply. The class stood erect, waiting to be dismissed. Master Keno, would you like to say a few words? Eric bowed to Master Cook. I'd love to. He turned to the class. I've really enjoyed watching you today. I can see some real talent in this class, and I see some people that are working very hard and focusing and trying, and I'm so proud of that. I can also see that Master Cook is an excellent teacher. Listen to him. Honor him. He came a few weeks ago to help me train for the Keno Challenge, and I'm grateful to him for what he taught me. Do what he says, and I know he will teach you what you need to know to obtain your black belts. I'm also proud of the way you were happy for the 3 classmates who advanced today. Don't worry if you didn't advance today. I know you will be advancing soon. Don't quit. Don't give up. Try hard. If you don't have to work hard at something, it's not as impressive when you make it. He smiled and bowed to them. Master Kino, Master Cook said, some of the parents here, actually most of them, didn't see you last time you were here when you did your form. Will you do it for them? It would go a long way to show them what can be achieved. Eric smiled. Yes, of course. Master Cook had the class sit around the perimeter of the class area as Eric removed his shoes, bowed, and moved to the center of the mats. He did the Kino form, the one that included pretty much every form from white belt to black belt taken from different styles of martial arts. It included some flips and jumping, spinning kicks, and that always impressed the kids. When he finished, he bowed and waited for the applause to stop before he bowed again and left the floor. Master Cook thanked him, called the class back to attention, and dismissed them. Eric went to the front to sit and put his shoes and socks back on, and while he did, a few of the parents came to speak with him. One of the mothers smiled and held her hand out for him to shake. I'm sorry for what you had to go through last weekend, she said. I just wanted to let you know that you have all of our support. We know what kind of people the Kinos are, and we knew you didn't do what they accused you of. Eric nodded. Thank you very much. He hadn't expected anyone to address his arrest, and he was a little taken aback. Jordan put her hand on his back to let him know she understood. They left as quickly as they could. Back at the house, while Jamie and Josie helped to set the table, young Eric and Jordan sat on the sofa talking. Are you okay? Jordan asked. He nodded, feeling strange. Don't know why I didn't expect anyone to mention it. It's making me feel a little sick, like it brought it all back to me. I get it. He drew a deep breath. I gotta shake it off. Sorry. Guess I'm looking wimpy. She laughed. There is nothing wimpy about you, 3. Well, there is something wimpy about me. That's not what it is. It's a phobia. It's not wimpy. Am I going to have to sick your grandfather on you? He laughed. No, please don't. A few minutes later, they were called in to eat. Lunch was delicious as usual, and Jewel let them know that Ricky Kino had spoken to her again about opening a restaurant, and they were actually throwing around ideas. They want to start small, see how that goes, and then move ahead from there. After lunch, Jordan, Jamie, and young Eric left for the game, followed by 2 of the agents, while 2 stayed to watch over Jewel and Josie. The game against the Washington State Cougars was a battle, but USC pulled it off. All the announcers and ESPN guys were touting the Heisman candidate, JoJo Adams, for his leadership skills and his quickness on his feet. Things were looking good. They were still undefeated and needed to stay that way to make it into the playoffs, especially when there were 3 SEC teams in the top 10. Right now, USC was ranked number 6, the best they've been ranked in years. The next morning, everyone went to church again except Mark, Bella, and Emily. However, JoJo and Logan did go, and then Sunday dinner was held at the Elder Kinos again. The following week seemed to follow the same script until it didn't. The few exceptions were that Taylor's volleyball games were a playoff tournament that would take place on Tuesday and Wednesday evenings. And that is the end of chapter 31.